Welcome to the Real Chili Podcast.
And the Golden Eagles of Marquette University in Milwaukee are bound for the Final Four for only the third time ever.
5 seconds left. Marquette down by one, trying to avoid the upset. Blue the drive, the left hand. It's good. 1 second to play. Vander Blue has put Marquette in front by one.
And I want to win every day as basketball players, as students, and I want to win every day, most importantly, as people.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Chili Podcast, the first edition of the 2018-2019 Marquette men's basketball season Real Chili Podcast. We're so glad to be back with you here as you get back to school, return from your August vacations, and get back to work. I've got my good buddy Pete Neighbor-Worth here. Pete, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Mike. Excited to get back in it. It's like the last few months, or I guess throughout the summer, it would be like once a month, we'd be like, hey, I think Marquette's going to be pretty good this year. And then I forget about it for like 4 weeks. And then another 4 weeks comes and says, I think Marquette's going to be pretty good this year. And so I'm just getting excited for the season. But we'll go fully into that with the guys.
I agree. I think we've got a great shot this year. And we've got two excellent people to cover the waterfront of Marquette men's basketball issues with us today. We have Ben Steele from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel and Andy Fleck from the proprietor of Anonymous Eagle. Gentlemen, how are you both doing today?
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me. It's September, man. It's almost September. It's almost basketball season. We got to get into shape here.
As some of my friends like to say, but college football season is here, and that means we're almost in the college basketball season, which is the good news.
I used to think college football was the end-all, be-all, but I have shifted to the point where it's college football season, and that means that all that means to me is that it's almost college basketball season. It's a beautiful time of year.
Yeah, I agree. Really only having college football ties to the University of Illinois in terms of fandom. I usually cannot wait until the start of basketball season.
So we are recording this in very, very late August. You'll probably be hearing this in early September. So students are back on campus. Obviously, the team has been on campus for much of the year. And you know, just before we hopped on, fellas, we were talking about what is the big theme for Marquette this year. And what some of what we want to do with this podcast today is explore the storylines of the upcoming season. What are the big themes that we're going to be looking for, whether it's defensive aptitude or whether it is can Wojo deliver? How is he going to fit the new pieces together? Is this the most talented roster we've had in the last decade? We're going to get into a lot of those things. We're going to get into nicknames for new players as well. But I kind of want to start off with this question. I think one of the big themes and storylines coming into this year is this is time for Wojo to deliver, right? This year and maybe the following year are really the first years that there are no excuses, at least in my opinion, that Wojo can make. He's got a roster around him. Do you fellas feel like that is one of the bigger themes coming into this season?
Definitely, yeah. Like we were talking before the pod that the roster for the upcoming season just has every piece imaginable that Wojo can need. You know, if he's got bigger defensive players, that was the excuse last year, right? That the defense wasn't good because they were playing two undersized guards, and you know they brought in a grad transfer in Joseph Charteny that's 6'4" with long arms. You know that fixes that issue. You know, last year interior defense wasn't an issue. This year Theo's got a year of experience, and they're also bringing Ed Morrow in as a transfer from Nebraska. You know, that fixes that issue. You got longer athletes on the wing, and you know every kind of style that you want to play, he can do it. So it's got to deliver this year.
I would totally agree with that. The roster is how Wojo probably would have envisioned a college basketball roster to be when he thinks of like how he wants to coach. Now that those players like Charteny, like Morrow, they're perfect pieces on paper, but we still don't know how they will mesh and how they will play once they're adapted into Wojo's system. So, I mean, the expectations are super high, so that'll be interesting to see how they can manage those and hopefully come off really hot to the start of the season and not succumb to the weight of those expectations.
Let's just assume that you're a freshman listening to this podcast for the first time, and you're getting acquainted with Marquette basketball. This is Wojo's 5th season. His first season, he was 13-19 overall. Since then, he's had almost 20 wins every year. He went 20 wins in his second year, 19 in his third year, and 21 just last year. So entering his 5th season, while the cupboard was left bare when he took over, but he has been able, as Ben was saying, to really build out a roster and kind of what we see basketball going towards today. A lot of switchables, a lot of size, a lot of length, a lot of athleticism. And so when we're talking about going into this season, part of it is building the roster, but there's also the other part of it, at least in my mind, which is going to define this year for him and maybe the trajectory of his career without getting too big, is can he put the pieces together, right? Can he mold this roster into something that on the court can deliver in a coherent way?
And that's the thing that's been, I've been trying to put this into words, and the best way I can explain the thought that's been kicking around in my head is the need to succeed this year is almost more important than actually succeeding, if that makes sense at all.
So you're saying if they don't succeed, it's not like it's going to be a huge knock on the program. It's more so a knock on Wojo? Is it, or a demand from the fan base?
I guess everything's put into place almost perfectly, it seems. We keep every single summer check-in with the Big East that you read from NBC Sports or Sports Illustrated or whatever have you. It's that when they write the paragraph on Marquette, it's, can they challenge Villanova? And when that's the national 10,000-foot view of the conference, like at that point, if people are from the outside are looking in with that thought process for the team, at that point, we're starting to look at the question of, let's see if Wojo can break what unfortunately has been a bit of a curse for Mike Krzyzewski assistants. A lot of them just do not succeed in their first stop. This is Wojo's first stop, with the exception of that one NCAA tournament appearance and the NIT, how much you want to consider that success last year. He hasn't really overachieved with the roster he's had.
Well, if you want to talk about like succeeding in this new season, neighbor, I think we did a pod on this relatively recently where the Big East lost so much top-tier talent, particularly Villanova, and I'm blanking at the moment on some of the other teams as I try to pull it up here.
Xavier, especially Xavier.
Yeah, just name them all, really.
Yeah. And Seton Hall lost their 4 seniors.
That's right. So, Angel Delgado, thank God he's gone. Although I love the fact, we'll get into this, but I love the fact that Matt Helt can legitimately check Angel Delgado. So, neighbor, right? If we're looking at this as Wojo's coming into this year, we think he has to deliver. This is a year in which he should be able to deliver at least maybe reasonably a third place finish, maybe aspirationally a second or first. Incorporated in that is the fact that there's a much more wide open Big East, right? Like there should be an opportunity for Marquette aside from Villanova.
Oh, there definitely should be. I mean, we just kind of went through all those teams that lost basically entire starting lineups, but entire starting lineups that were first team Big East members and second team Big East members. But the thing is, Wojo's he hasn't done it before. We haven't finished in the top of the conference under him. Do you guys know what our highest finish is in the Big East under Wojo? It's got to be like 5th or 6th.
I think officially it's 4th, but it's like a 4-way tie for 4th.
Tied for 4th, yeah.
Yeah, so the roster shapes up, looks great, and with all those departures from the other teams, it's understandable that we would be predicted to finish up that high, but I guess I just want to kind of exert some caution for my expectations of the season.
Yeah, and to go along with the expectations, I think there's so many new pieces coming in this season, too, that it might take a little while for everything to kind of come together. I mean, when you think about, we mentioned the 2 transfers, the grad transfer, Chartenay, and traditional transfer, Morrow, and then throw in that, like all the people coming back from injuries. Sam's coming off the hip surgery. We don't know what he's going to be like or how long it's going to take him to play into shape. His brother Joey coming off his foot issue that's really bothered him the last 2 years. Like, we don't know what he's going to be like. We don't know how Greg's going to come back from his thumb issue that he played with all last year. I know it looks better, but, it's still going to be an adjustment, and you're just throwing in all these new pieces at the beginning, I think it's going to take a little while for everything to kind of gel together.
So we've mentioned this a few times, so let's kind of move on to the next segment that I wanted to talk about here. Obviously, Wojo and can he deliver is one of the big themes. I think one of the major components of that storyline is the roster he's built. And I, as I was kind of preparing for this, I jotted down the note, just a question to myself: is this the most talented or deepest? I know those are two different things, but let's just see where we come out on this. Is this the most talented or deepest Marquette basketball roster in the last decade? Some of that is going to be defined during the season because we haven't seen a lot of these kids play, and a lot of it is, kind of what you just mentioned. Is Joey Hauser going to be 100%? Is Sam going to be, all these questions. But if you look in the past decade, some of those teams that are included in there are teams with Jimmy Butler and Jay Crowder, right, and DJO and these guys. So that's some heavy competition, but I think, at least to me, it feels like that could be the stratosphere that this team is in. Who knows if these guys are going to be, all-pro NBA guys, but they have the talent.
Depth is true. This might be the deepest team.
I agree with that.
It's weird that it's one of those things where we're looking back at teams, and when you look back at the 2011-12 roster, you realize that there's
four NBA guys on there, right?
There's 4 NBA players.
How did we not get to a Final Four with that team? Good God.
Yeah, there's 4 guys who have played time in the NBA on that roster, including a guy has been in the league since he left Marquette. In fact, the other guys have been cup of coffee guys, but they're all there. It's hard to say that that's not a more talented team. The team the year before that has the same thing: 4 NBA guys, 5 NBA guys actually. I'm sorry. If you look at the roster though, that team wasn't deep.
Pretty fast.
Earlier, Wojo can play. Whatever opponent is on the other end of the court this year, Wojo can adjust his lineup and play whatever is going to maximize Marquette's potential against that team. We might be in a situation where, say, Ed Morrow goes for 20 and 10 one night, and then he maybe only plays 10 minutes the next night because that's what the opponent calls for.
Yeah, the matchups.
Well, I think that's one of the big questions, right? Is this going to be a roster where Wojo is night to night going to have to – are guys going to define themselves, right? Is Ed Morrow going to force Wojo to keep him on the court for 27 minutes a night? Or is it going to be more so, Morrow's having a good night, let's move Helt out and play a little bit smaller. So those are some of the questions that we're going to get into real quick early in the season. But I got to ask, is anybody as excited as me to have a legit 6'3", 200-pound point guard for Marquette who is a defensive stopper? I don't care if this guy doesn't have a jump shot. I think he does. But, I cannot remember, maybe it's Dwight Bikes, I cannot remember a primary ball handler who had the size, the athleticism, the defensive capability that Chartouni represents in my fandom of Marquette. It's relatively rare to have a point guard that seems to have the skill set that Chartouni has. Ben, have you been able to see much of him or interact with him much?
I have never actually seen him play live. Not allowed to go into any summer practices.
Sneak in, Ben.
But, yeah, I talked to him a couple times. Yeah, really sharp guy. Everyone says he's just outstandingly smart. He's taken a pretty high-level business classes right now. That's what he was saying. They've had to, adjust the practice schedule because he's taken these, night classes. And he's no joke, hardcore business-savvy type classes that he's taken. And, yeah, everyone I talked to, I talked to his high school coach in Montreal. I talked to the guy who recruited him to Fordham. And the first thing they mentioned is high IQ, especially on defense. And he just knows the right spots to be in, and he's got long arms. They're very active, and you talk about what they've been missing the last couple of years. That on paper, that's exactly what they need.
We've talked a lot about Chartouni and Morrow and the additions, which obviously we're all maybe not quite as excited as you are, Mike, but because it sounds like you're pretty damn excited.
Yeah, it didn't sound like there was much excitement aside from me.
I think we are all pretty excited to see what these guys can do. But Andy, you kind of talked about it in our discussion leading up to this, our one departure, Rousey. How much exactly do you think we will miss him, despite all of the roster overhaul?
When we were kicking ideas around, my thought was, how much of Marquette's efficiency last year where they were one of the 15 best efficient offenses in the country. How much of that was derived from Rousey's weird ability to get to the free throw line? If you guys have subscriptions to The Athletic, go kick around and find Ken Pomeroy's article he wrote about how unfair getting fouled shooting a three-pointer is. It's basically 3 guaranteed points because you've got like 80-90% free throw shooters who are the ones getting fouled. It's basically guaranteeing 3 points on a shot that you had maybe a 40% chance at getting 3 points. And that's gone. And nothing against Joseph Chartouni because he's shown flickers of being able to shoot it. But he did shoot 28% on threes last year.
Yeah.
Is his defense going to make up for that weird efficiency that Rousey brought? It's a question, and we're not going to find out until we actually have game film.
I'll just miss his balls.
Yeah.
I'll miss his balls. Late in games, I mean, he had some of the most clutch shots and a vast amount of clutch shots of one Marquette player than I can remember.
He's not Steph Curry, but the mojo that he plays with and just the pure confidence that he has in his shot isn't dissimilar from Curry, right?
No, and the team fed off it too. Once he got going, like everyone else would just kind of pick it up a little bit, and then Rousey would have off games too, where he was just bad Rousey, and that affected the team too. That the way he went last year was kind of how well the team performed.
So, second storyline we've got is this season's roster the talented deepest in a decade? It sounds like we're coming out. It could be the deepest. It may be the deepest, but talented. Obviously, we're going to have to wait and see kind of how this season shakes out. So, just based off that point, we're having a conversation about Andrew Rousey and losing all the productivity, the offensive productivity that he has. Let's talk about Marcus Howard, because if there's a third big story this season, it's that Marcus Howard is a junior. He may or may not still be 18 years old.
17.
He's forever 17 in our minds.
Forever 17. This is his team. He is the captain of this team. He was the leader of this team when he was 17 years old, right? I mean, for most intents and purposes. So throughout last season, we had this interesting debate on the podcast, which I think all of you were, got into at some point, was this juxtaposition of Rousey's efficiency, Howard's efficiency, who's handling the ball, who's distributing. So I'm trying to figure out what Marcus's role is this year, with Chartouni likely being the primary ball handler. Obviously, Marcus is going to get some of that, but Marcus is going to play off the ball a little bit more, and some of his decision-making ability, which is one of his strong suits, may not be as much on show because of Chartouni. So I'm wondering what you guys see in the cards for Marcus Howard this season and what direction you think his game goes.
I'm kind of curious if Wojo's been telling the truth all summer.
What has he been saying?
He was on, I heard it the first time on John Rothstein's podcast, because, again, national viewpoint, the name that's going to come up is Marcus Howard. Wojo made the point that, Marcus scored 20 points a game last year, blah, 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 blah. But his general point was that Marcus is probably not going to do that again. And he's going to be relied on to distribute them all more. So is that more of a question of Wojo's going to be mixing lineups up a lot? And so it's not going to really be, Chartouni and Howard playing 30 minutes a game together like Rousey and Howard did? Is that just Marcus knows the system, so they're going to have to rely on him instead of Chartouni?
See, I think it's that. Like, Wojo knows he can trust Howard. He's one of the smartest players out on the court, so why not, at least to some degree, him and Chartouni put the ball in their hands and say, if you guys are open and got a shot, take it, but otherwise find the hot guy, right?
I think Chartouni's presence is going to really open. It's going to be like a whole new world for Howard out on the court, because I feel like he always felt pressure to not only carry the team offensively along, especially if Rousey wasn't making shots, but also kind of be the lead distributor, which isn't. When Rousey was having his off games, which he did have, he was always constantly, under the microscope of, now I need to be this giant scorer, now I need to be kind of both. And really being a point guard isn't his strong suit. I mean, he's not a great ball handler, and he did turn it over a lot. But I think Chartouni's presence, being a veteran college basketball player, will really kind of allow him to just kind of not have so much pressure on him and just more loose. And we kind of saw that stretch of like 3 or 4 games where he really shot poorly. And I don't think that there's going to be as much pressure on him to score this year, and he can just kind of play his game.
They're good. They play so fast that the shots are going to be there.
Right.
So just looking at the roster, who else aside from Howard do you think can create their own shot?
Oh, I got into a fight on Twitter about this recently. Sam Hauser can create his own shot.
Can he?
My God.
Sam Hauser doesn't seem to be able to create his own shot from the three-point line, right? I don't think I'm crazy. I think inside the three-point line, Sam Hauser...
He backs you down and then does that little twisting turnaround shot that he does in the lane.
Exactly, but he's not... I guess he's not your prototypical shot creator, right, Andy? Or do you see him as that?
Let's get this fight going again.
Let's get it going.
Sam Hauser is never going to be mistaken for James Harden. Okay, we'll say that for sure.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if he can grow the beard like that, for one.
He's trying. It seems like he's trying.
Wojo's got the goatee, right?
I saw that picture, and then I saw him a few days later. I had like a list of jokes I was going to make fun of him for having a goatee.
I was so looking forward to him keeping that, and then we can make all sorts of like evil Spock jokes, and it would have been great.
Yeah, but when I saw him, he didn't have it, so
I just want to see Matt Helt with a beard.
I'm not sure he can grow the beard.
I don't think he can.
Nothing wrong with that. So Hauser, though, Andy.
So he's not going to get mistaken for James Harden, but he can create his own shot inside, like Ben was saying. And he's not going to get a chance to do it a lot, and I'll admit that, sure. But the fact of the matter is that Sam Hauser should have won the road game at Georgetown last year on a shot where he drove to the corner and hit a step-back three. He did. This happened. And on his bum hip, too. So if he can get his agility back after hip surgery, and he's going to be able to move a little bit better, 10, 15% better because he's not being hindered by whatever he had. I'm not saying he needs to do it like 5 times a game, but if Marquette needs a shot, he can get it. I believe he can do it whenever he wants.
I think he's got a legit shot at being, if he's healthy, I think he's got a legit shot at being the Big East MVP this year.
Yes. 100% true. And it's going to shock everybody, and people are going to say, oh, where did this come from? And he averaged 14, 4, and 3 last year. I mean, come on.
Yeah. 50% from 3 or whatever he was.
Pretty much, yeah.
So let's talk about another one of Hauser's teammates, and that is a fan favorite, Mr. Matt Helt. We just mentioned his ability to grow or not grow facial hair. Don't worry, big fella, it'll happen eventually. And one of the themes here is Helt has emerged kind of from being a freshman and sophomore as one of those guys who would get 5 to 12 minutes in a game, maybe do a couple of things. The crowd loves him. He gives effort, right? That was immediate from the start. Even if he's not always doing the right thing, he's given effort. And now Helt is in the position where he's a senior, but he's on a roster in which he is no longer, perhaps, the most viable option or kind of the most athletic option at his position. So I guess the question is, does Matt Helt suffer in terms of playing time, or does what makes Matt Helt, his effort, does that keep him on the court?
I was thinking that Matt might suffer in terms of playing time, just in terms of what we were talking about with all the different lineups that are possible.
Yeah.
That he might be the one who had to give up time if Wojo goes all shooters and just tries to fake his way through playing defense inside, depending on what the other team's throwing out there. But I forgot Matt's a weirdly efficient rebounder. I mean, maybe not weirdly efficient. Maybe that's not the right word. But, he was top 500 in both rates, offensive defense rates last year. He can pull it off if he needs to. But, Ed Morrow's better, though. And I know one of the reasons Morrow wanted to come to Marquette is because Wojo said he wasn't going to be playing center, which is exclusively what Tim Miles wanted to do at Nebraska with him. How much does Ed Morrow's ability to block shots and rebound at 6'7" affect Matt's playing time? How much of Ed's desire to do something else on the court affect Matt's playing time? There's a lot of questions there. I'm really curious. We saw Matt Helt, if the Marquette put a highlight video together, and there was a brief glimpse of Matt Helt hitting baseline jumpers.
Oh, yeah, the 15-foot Matt Helt shot, yeah.
which raises the question too. It's never happened at Nebraska, but can Ed Morrow shoot from outside at all? Otherwise, he doesn't fit into this roster seemingly because he's never attempted a three for the Cornhuskers.
No.
If he can shoot it outside at all, like passively even, like that'd be an amazing revelation of this team.
That'd be amazing. All I want from Ed Morrow is just to be a bulldog down low. We need someone to eat up rebounds, and Help can do that in spots, but like just give me one guy down low who is reliable throughout a game.
Well, we could say the same thing, Andy, what you said about Morrow about Helt, because Helt never shoots from outside. But
I've seen him do it though. Like I watched a couple of games when he was at Nina. He shot threes for Nina in high school.
Yeah, I think he can do it. I mean, he's a great free throw shooter. He was an amazing free throw shooter last year. So I mean, if he can expand that arsenal of his to be able to hit those kind of shots, I don't know how much he was going to actually even move out of the paint really in this kind of offense that we have, but I mean, just giving it another option would be awesome to see.
I think what the coaches like about Matt is that he doesn't attempt anything outside of 3 feet. He knows his role. He knows like he's never going to do that in a game. That's what they like about him. And I think he knows that, and that's why he doesn't do it.
Well, I think if Helt ever attempts a three-pointer and makes it, one, the fist serve forum is no longer going to exist because it will crumble from the foundations because the crowd will go nuts.
We got to spend $500 more to build another arena.
Gone too soon.
Gone too soon.
Didn't even make it 1 year under.
All thanks to the milkman.
Under your vision there, Mike.
So Matt Helt, I think that covers it for that storyline. Freshmen or folks who are new to Marquette basketball, Matt Helt is one of those guys that is easy to like as a basketball player, and you will no doubt soon be following him, and I'm sure as an individual as well. But as a basketball player, he's one. And
I think he's going to get his minutes. I mean, I remember I think it was 2 years ago when we were kind of in a funk. We had a really bad loss against Georgetown at Georgetown when they were garbage, and it was Luke Fisher's senior year, I think, and Matt Helt was put into the starting lineup, and then we went on this kind of nice little 3-game win streak or something like that. I think Wojo just likes having him on the floor.
All right, so we mentioned the fist serve forum just a minute ago, and this is certainly a storyline for this season. Very few people have actually been inside the fist serve forum and seen what it looks like. But by all accounts, and granted these are by accounts from people who are vested in promoting the new arena, but it seems like this is going to be a terrific new arena. It's a little bit smaller than the Bradley Center, probably a little bit more intimate. It'll be a little bit closer to the court. Ben, I want to throw it over to you to see what you think, but Marquette fans should be excited about this new arena, right?
Oh, yeah, you can feel it. Like, the upper deck is not very big at all. Like, I want to say it's only like 15 rows in the upper deck. So all the seats are all lower bowl, and when you're in there, you're closer to the court. You're almost like on top of the court, and when you're in there, you can feel like when the crowd gets going in there, it's going to be absolutely crazy inside of there.
So the fist serve forum's capacity is listed on Wikipedia as 17,500, whereas the Bradley Center's capacity was just over 18.5. Just over 18.5. So you've got a difference there of about 2,000, or 1,000, excuse me. So not dramatically different, but that intimacy kind of
the configuration is better,
right? And creating more of not a Duke-like environment, because I don't think that's what this is going to be, but creating. And I heard a couple players mention this, right? Creating an environment where the fans are more on top of the court. I think Marquette has a pretty good home record, but building on that is only going to make things better.
Well, on top of that, it also is a great recruiting tool with a brand new stadium and all the bells and whistles. It looks, I don't know what you guys think, I just think it looks cool from the outside. Just from all the Instagram videos of all the gourmet food I've been seeing that they're going to be serving. I mean, I think it's going to be a top-notch experience. And I think my first chance to get there will be the Wisconsin game, so I'm pretty stoked about it.
The real question is, are they going to parachute things from the ceiling like they did at the Bradley Center?
That's one thing they don't really take a lot of pictures of that. It's like, hey, are there cool catwalks up there to actually throw things?
They don't. I'm trying to think. I don't think I ever looked up there. Yeah, I can't.
Yeah, Ben, give us a catwalk report when you. Please.
Breaking parachute.
First time to get in there. Right.
So let's move on to another storyline that we're really looking at this season. What do you think the ideal lineup knowing what we know right now, knowing what we know of the talent on the roster, if we're going from 1 through 5, even though we know that's a bit of an antiquated way to think about basketball. Neighbor, I'm going to throw it to you first. What do you think is the ideal lineup for this Marquette team? Again, knowing what we know now.
I'm going to throw this one to Ben and Andy, actually, because they cover the team a lot more closely than I do, so I'd kind of like to hear their thoughts on it before I kind of weigh in.
I'm throwing it to Andy first.
I should have stalled longer. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're at the end of the shot clock.
Let's take this position by position. So let's just start with the one. Let's start with the traditional point guard spot, and we can all go through that. Who do you think ideal there is, Andy?
It's Chartouni. The assist rates and steals are too much to ignore.
Yeah, I'm going Chartouni too there for the exact same reasons.
Yep, agreed.
So moving to the 2 spot, if Chartouni's at 1, if we're talking about the starting lineup in the 2 position, I think it has to be Marcus Howard, right? There's only one spot on the roster he could play if it's not the 1 and it's the 2, and there's no way he doesn't start.
Yep.
So when you're looking at this roster and you see how many guys we have at 6'5", 6'8", 6'9", 6'7", it starts to get interesting around the 3 and the 4 spots, which is really where the debate is going to be. So I think if you're looking at the 3 spot, let's see, running over the roster, who are some of the legit guys who could start at the 3 spot? You would say...
Can I throw the rock into the pond?
Do it.
The best option, the best maximizing the potential of the roster, presuming 100% health for everyone, best option at 3 is Sam Hauser.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing too. Might run into some defensive issues there with Sam Garden, like a little quicker guys, but on the other end, like if you want to spread out the floor a little bit, and whoever you want down low, if you want to get Ed to play the 4, then Sam's got to play the 3.
So you got Hauser at 6'8" at the 3. Sam Hauser, I guess we can't say just Hauser anymore. Sam Hauser at the 3. So then who goes at the 4? Because you got Joey.
Joey.
Yeah.
So
and that's my pick. I mean, the way I've explained Joey to people, because when he made his commitment and he signed, I've had other bloggers from around the Big East, poke around and ask us like, hey, so what's his deal? He's the younger brother, so what's up? And I'm like, no, he's basically the exact same player, except he's bigger, which is from what I've seen from watching him play with Sam at point. It's the same guy. And if you can get those 2 guys, if you get 2 of those guys on the floor at the same time, your options as a team just go completely through the roof. That's how I see it. Ed Morrow's got all these skills, and Jamal Cain is ridiculously athletic, and Greg Elliott, who should be amazingly improved once he has 2 hands available to him, and so on and so forth. But the way I see it, Marquette's best possible lineup, 1 through 5, involves both Hausers on the floor.
What do we know about Joey Hauser's defensive abilities?
That is a question mark, because when I saw him playing, it was always with Sam and with Trev Anderson as well. They were the games I watched. There was always, okay, well, I don't need to watch the second half because they're up 20.
Basically, hasn't played in almost 2 years.
There is that too.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you, Ben, is what kind of early season as they're getting into practices, what do you think his health situation is like?
I think he's fully cleared.
This is Joey?
Joey.
And like I said, I haven't actually seen him on the court.
Okay.
I can't speak it to any firsthand experience. I'm just going from what I've been told is that he's fully cleared to do all activities. So I think he's a full go, but yeah, I don't know. I've never actually seen it, so I can't really speak to it.
I think without, just still thinking about the 4 position, I mean, I think how Joey Hauser makes sense there, but it feels like Ed Morrow, who, again, has played at high-level Division I basketball. He's a completely different player than Joey Hauser, and I'm not making that comparison, but it feels like Morrow is a little bit more of a known commodity in that we know what he can do, we know what his strengths are, and I don't think you put Ed Morrow at the 5. He's 6'7", he's 230. I don't think you put him at the 5. So maybe Ed Morrow isn't starting at the 4. Maybe he's getting a significant chunk of minutes at the 4. I just think this team, I don't know if Ike Ecky's going to be the guy on the boards yet that we need. If at the 5 spot, Helt could be that person. Let's not forget about Theo John, who, kind of throughout last season developed a surprisingly impressive offensive game. Like he kind of seemed to figure things out throughout the year. thinking about Ed Morrow, we need a guy who can be a bull on the boards and who can kind of play that cleanup role, and Help can do that. But I also think there's a role for Morrow here. So, and the most natural fit for him feels like at the 4.
I think so, but I also think that, that's the benefit of having such a deep roster, is that we know that, first of all, that the backcourt's primarily going to be Chartouni and Howard and Greg Elliott. Now, 3 through 5, we can rotate however many different pieces with all these different guys. I mean, Jamal Cain's 6'8", and he could play the 3, he could play the 4 in some lineups, when we're going for a little more offense and athleticism and quickness. And with Joey there, hopefully he's healthy and playing like he did when he was dominating, the state of Wisconsin. So that's where the depth really shows. Like Theo John, like you said, Mike, was really good in some games last year towards the end defensively and showing some nice offensive versatility too. So there's a lot of pieces there in the front court that it's going to be a really nice advantage for Marquette to have, which we hadn't had in a while.
One of those good problems to have.
Right.
So if we've got Chartouni at the 1, Howard at the 2, Sam at the 3, Joey at the 4, then at the 5 you're left with a decision between Theo John, Matt Helt, maybe Ike Eke, probably not. Maybe I don't know what to think about Ike Eke. Ben, what should we think about Ike Eke?
I don't think people should expect too much out of Ike this year. I mean, last year was supposed to be like the year they redshirted and picked up more nuances of the game during practice, and he had back surgery, so he didn't get to practice at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure everyone saw the jumping video.
Oh yeah.
Seeing him in person, like his shoulders are just like insanely. He's got the perfect frame, but I don't know if the basketball skills and feel for the game are quite there yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, he could very well pick it up very quickly with his athletic skills, but I don't know how much to expect out of him.
And talk about Ike, Mike, if you don't mind me transitioning a bit.
Please.
I think it's a perfect segue. One of the questions I was kind of thinking of is what you guys think, or who you guys think will be the biggest, is the newcomer, first-year player to Marquette that will have the biggest impact on the year, whether it be Brendan Bailey, who we haven't discussed yet, or Eke or Joey. I think we already know that Morrow and Chartouni will probably have significant roles, but out of those 3 guys, who do you guys think will end up having the biggest impact?
I want to toss this one at you. Does everyone realize that Marquette has 0 traditional freshmen on the roster?
Huh. I guess we did not.
Yeah.
The 3 guys who are listed on the roster as freshmen right now are Joey Hauser, who enrolled back in January, so he's actually a redshirt freshman. Ike Eke, who was a redshirt freshman because he was here all of last year, and Brendan Bailey, who's 20 years old.
I think he's 21, actually.
Is he actually 21 already?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay. I didn't realize
I think his birthday was a couple months ago.
Definitely he's not drinking beer, though.
We can actually guarantee he's not, which is weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A dramatic shift from just a couple of years ago when this was a freshman and sophomore-laden team who didn't have the experience to totally flip to that. I mean, there are a couple of walk-ons who are freshmen, right? But for the folks who are going to play.
Here's the thing. If we're asking a question of which of the 3 freshmen as listed on the roster are going to have the biggest impact on the team, for me, by default, the answer has to be Joey, because, like Ben said, with Ike's back surgery, I don't feel comfortable expecting anything from anybody who's had back surgery of any kind in the last year.
Yeah.
And I don't feel comfortable expecting anything from someone who spent 2 years on a Mormon mission where he was only able to do anything athletically related once a week.
Well, are we including Chartouni under first-year players, or is this?
No, I don't think so. I was just kind of wondering because
I was just thinking as far as the 3 guys who are listed as freshmen. Chartouni's got 3 years of Fordham experience. He's kind of a known quantity. These 3 guys we don't know really what they are as college players yet. I just, as far as Ike and Brendan Bailey, I can't bring myself to expect anything from them.
Yeah, I think it's got to be Joey just by default, and just with his shooting ability, he'll find a role to get in there some way, get some minutes, and be effective just on offense, if not defensively.
Right. I guess it depends. I mean, I haven't seen Brendan Bailey play at all, and like you said, he hasn't played a whole lot of basketball in the last few years. So, and with the roster being constituted how it is, it seems like he's got a few guys to break through if he's going to start seeing some minutes.
That's the other thing, too. He plays the position that Marquette is the deepest at. By the way, I think no one has actually said it yet, so I'm going to go ahead and say the name of the player I don't think we've mentioned yet. Shout out to Sakar Anim.
Yes.
Yeah, geez.
Somehow we've gotten all those way and we haven't mentioned him once, and he's probably still going to play like 25 minutes a game.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, he's this kind of guy who's ridiculously athletic, like clearly has a skill set, but if you're looking at him, I don't know if he has carved out his niche on this team yet. Like, he can be a slasher, he can finish at the rim in spots, but like he hasn't become as dependable as you would need him to be. Like, I don't know exactly what his role is. You put him at the 2 or you put him at the 3, depending on the lineup. But he's kind of in this no man's land where he needs to take a step in a certain direction to really solidify his role on this team.
Kind of a jack of all trades, master of none kind of a deal for him.
It's
going to get him a lot of minutes on this team, but it's also going to be hard to pigeonhole's not the right word, but like as far as like Wojo saying, okay, well, this is my big lineup, this is my small lineup, this is my shooting threes lineup, that kind of a thing. It's hard to sometimes find a spot for him in like one of those specific type of rosters.
He is a good defender, and we do know that about him, and he can be a good perimeter defender. So I think he can hang his hat on that, and defense is certainly something this team needs. So before we get to the final question, there's one more question that kind of is burned in my brain, and it's about the defense, which has been an Achilles heel for Wojo and for Marquette teams since Wojo took over the helm. And I guess the question is that in defensive rotations and in defensive gelling over the past several years, it seems like there's always been a weak link. Maybe that was Rousey, maybe that was others, maybe there just wasn't something meshing for the team as a whole. Do we think that somehow in Wojo's 5th year they magically figure the defense out and there is a competent product put on the court relatively early in the season, not first thing in the season? But do we think that's something they can figure out? Do we think the defensive issues were player-based, or are they more scheme and coach-based?
I think roster continuity plus added size, I think just both those factors are big on the defensive end.
Yeah.
As far as communication and where you're supposed to be, and players know the scheme, they're more comfortable, they communicate better. I just think that's going to just help tremendously. And I don't know if you had a benchmark in mind as for what the defense was, like top 75 defense, top 50 defense.
I don't tend to think in rankings like that. I just don't want to find myself in too many situations where I'm looking at their defense and saying, what the fuck, how did that happen? Like, it's going to happen at some points, right? But there shouldn't be a guy running free on the baseline, every one of 4
like the end of the Georgetown game last year where the guy drove the full length of the court.
Or
getting turned one straight line down the court.
Or the end of the DePaul game in the Big East tournament where Rousey didn't switch and Sakar literally started jumping up and down in anger.
So none of those.
The Struce got loose. When the Struce got loose and almost put a dagger into our hearts in the first round of the Big East tournament, that was very scary. But thank God.
That was maybe the closest I've ever come to vomiting while watching a Marquette.
That happened to me many times my senior year.
See, I was in the band, so
okay. There you go. Got to keep it together to play those woodwind instruments.
That's right.
So I think it just has to improve, like just on those factors alone.
Right.
Well, and when your point guard literally admits to not playing defense, and taking him out and putting in like a one of the best defenders in the country, that should help too.
Yes, and I will go ahead and stake the claim to the nickname Joey Steals for Joseph Chartouni.
I like that. I might just steal it and pawn it off as my own idea.
You're the second person to might be stealing it.
So Benny steals, Joey steals. Anything's better than just Shart, I would think.
Sure.
Yikes! Yeah, strike that one immediately.
Maybe Tooney. We'll go with Tooney. I'll go with Tooney.
All right, so last question here, folks, that we kind of want to debate. We love to set expectations, realistic or otherwise. That's what this podcast is all about. So let's go around the horn a little bit and have a little bit of a conversation to wrap us up here about, we started off this pod talking about this is a put up or shut up season for Wojo this season and next season, really. But this year is really critical because he's got the pieces on the roster to deliver a successful season. So I'm not going to write this in stone, but fellas, maybe we can start with you, Ben. What do you think, if we're talking about a put up and shut up season for Wojo, what do you think the benchmark for success is where the fans aren't saying, oh, Wojo can't cut it, like he can't do it? What do you think, what threshold does he need to cross to avoid that?
I would say top 4 at least in the Big East, probably maybe even top 3, and then. Does
he need to advance? He needs to get to the second weekend?
Second weekend, yeah. I think that would silence a lot of critics for sure.
Andy, what about you?
I am virulently against setting expectations for the NCAA tournament.
Yes, for the record, I am too.
I've seen a lot of people who are super jumped up about Marquette had better make the Sweet 16 or Wojo needs to be fired. So let me throw this curveball at you. Let's say the top of the Big East is a logjam, but Marquette wins the outright title with at a record of 13-5. So they're the number 1 seed in the Big East tournament, but it was kind of jumbled and they took their beatings. They don't win the Big East tournament because everybody could, there's enough teams that can beat everybody on any given night. And they end up with in the neighborhood of a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that you want to fire a coach who just won a Big East tournament or just won a Big East regular season title if they lose to the 7, I think? If they lose to a 7 seed on a buzzer beater 3, but Wojo's holding the Big East regular season title, you want him fired. It's a very real possibility there, and it sounds insane. So that's why I hate doing that kind of, he's got to go to that kind of, it doesn't make any sense.
I'm going to push back on that just a little bit. I don't think, unless Wojo loses to DePaul twice and then in the first round of the Big East tournament, I want him to still be here. I think he's done some good things. Clearly, he's put together this roster. I would never advocate for if he doesn't make this cut in the Big East tournament, he should be fired. Or in the NCAA tournament. That's ridiculous. But this is his 5th year. This isn't some backwater school where we're accepting of not advancing in the tournament, right? We were in the tournament a couple years ago. We got the doors blown off by a really good and a Cinderella-run South Carolina team. So I hear what you're saying in that there's so many variables that go into this that are outside of his control that it's impossible to say, if you don't get to the Sweet 16, you're in trouble. But he's got to demonstrate success somehow, and we cannot write off the NCAA tournament. Good coaches find a way to win. Maybe there's some ridiculous thing that happens. Maybe they come up against the next iteration of Gordon Hayward and Butler or who knows. But we've got to define success for this guy, and success is the NCAA tournament. And if we end up this season where we just sneak into the tournament and have a disappointing first round loss, I don't know if I'm out at that point, but
that's what I was talking about before, where this is where he needs to show he can do it. He's got the deepest roster. He's got his best roster. This is a team that reasonable people think can win a regular season championship in the Big East.
Yeah.
That kind of team should be a top 5, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but top 20 seed in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, they shouldn't be sweating out on Selection Sunday.
This should be a no-doubter. The Big East tournament, not even the Big East tournament, the past Valentine's Day should be about seeding. Whatever the NCAA tournament appearance, again, we're saying this is super important here, making it super important. I can't, things happen. Jean Felix goes nuts and buries the Steve Novak senior year team. Things happen, but they need to not get buried. That South Carolina loss, that can't happen.
God.
You lose by a couple of possessions to a team that goes white hot. Okay, it happens, but getting buried can't happen.
Neighbor, what do you think? We need to hear from you on this important front.
It's probably the most polarizing debate in Marquette basketball right now, which I don't even know if it's all that much of a debate at this point, if it's really that strong of an issue.
My Twitter mentions seem to really make it one.
Okay, yeah, which I Mike, we always have tend to kind of disagree a little bit on this, and I kind of fall more in the Andy camp, and if I'm being an apologist and not having expectations high enough for Marquette, then maybe that's on me. But the guys showed a very successful stretch of recruiting. He's had top 10 offensive efficiency teams in back-to-back years, I believe. And outside of, off the court, he's pretty much everything you want in a college basketball coach.
Yeah.
He's affable. He's not necessarily the funniest guy in the world, but he's gregarious and he does things the right way, and he does the youth camp and does all the things that you want for a big-time coach. But also, this is the year where he needs to prove it on the court. And, outside of a disastrous year, where if I would say disastrous is, I would probably say disastrous is not making the tournament.
Yep. If we don't make the tournament, it's a disaster.
I would probably say that this year. Last year, I wouldn't have said that, but this year I do. But I want to give the guy the benefit of the doubt, and the people flying off the handle just kind of irk me. But at the same time, this is the year where we really got to find out. And if he has a successful year, let's build upon that.
Well, the beauty of podcasts and the beauty of verbal conversation is the fact that you can articulate more nuance in a more reasonable manner, whereas you're looking on Twitter with 240 characters, or you're looking on MU Scoop and you got to use all caps and exclamation points and what have you to get your point across, and that's just not the place for legitimate basketball debate a lot of the time, particularly when you get into things like this, because there are a lot of give and takes. So, well, it sounds actually like we're agreed in that. Andy and Ben, would you agree that if we don't make the tournament, the season could be reasonably classified as a disaster?
Yeah, if something went disastrously wrong.
Disastrously wrong,
I would think.
Andy?
Yeah, we're talking about, like, if this is a non-tournament year, we're talking multiple. There better be a multiple season-ending injuries kind of a season.
Right. That's
not that we want
what
that.
I was going to say. Yeah.
Not that we want that, but that better be the explanation as to why.
I think this is going to be a really fun season. No matter where we end up going with the different roster lineups they're going to come into play, with all the new talent, with the returning talent, there's no reason this isn't going to be a blast to watch. Game in and game out.
And the new stadium.
All right, so Ben, Andy, thanks so much for joining the show. We appreciate you guys hopping on. Anything, Ben, let's start with you. Anything you want to plug that you're looking at, that you're working on right now, or where can people find your work?
jsonline.com. There's a Golden Eagles tab. They kind of rearranged the website a month ago or so, but you can still find everything on there. Just wrote a long story about Wojo and his professional playing career in Poland that lasted 3 months. That published a couple days ago. It was a fun one to do. It was really good. And yeah, it was a good one. So check that one out. Great.
We'll tweet that out. Andy, what do you got cooking right now?
AnonymousEagle.com is the website. We're in full fall sports mode. Men's soccer is kicking off as we actually talk. Women's soccer is underway. Volleyball has just finished a 2-1 weekend. Came kind of close to upsetting the number 16 team in the country. So they should be really, really good.
Neighbor, I don't know what you're working on. You're getting married soon, right? You're living a good life, right? What are you working on?
Yeah, working on a wedding, working on my fantasy football team. That's pretty much it.
Two important things. Equally important
right,
in some people's eyes.
Exactly.
All right, fellas. Well, thanks so much for joining the show today. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Stay tuned to this feed. We're on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube. We will be coming to you much more frequently as the season heats up, with special guests and other surprise appearances. And then when we get into the nitty-gritty of November and the season, we'll do our player review, roster review, and expectations pod. So thanks again for listening. Signing off for Pete Worth, Ben Steele, and Andy Fleck from Anonymous Eagle. I'm Mike Lavender. We'll catch you next time on the Real Chili Podcast.